Hi, I'm Brad Reynolds. I'm the SVP of AI at Expedient, co-founder of the business, leading the AI product build and kind of GTM at Expedient. So we're building out the chat, the data, and the agentic framework to power kind of AI innovation for our clients for tomorrow.
Hey, I'm Thomas Cooper. I am Director of AI Product here at Expedient. I am the architect of the AI control solution. I keep my finger on the pulse of the AI community, making sure that the tools we build fill real needs.
What's changed in the market? And why is everyone suddenly talking about agentic AI?
So I think the big evolution in the last 2 years, but especially the last year, is now that people have dabbled in AI on an individual basis or a corporate basis, but a human basis, they're looking as like, okay, how do I start mechanizing this inside of my organization? Kind of what do I need to build around that? That's a lot more than just people summarizing emails and writing notes that they're doing kind of through chat interfaces. And so the conversation has moved from how do I get my organization kind of chat, at least at the fringe, to how do I start building this at scale into the organization?
Yes, people have become successful with chat. The understanding of what the art of the possible is has began to unlock. And now, initially, all we really wanted was let's make people more efficient, let's make their jobs easier, let's make them more professional. Now we've gotten to the place where it's how can we take all of those same things that we've added to our knowledge workers, our digital workers, how can we productize those? How can we turn those into processes that run for the business? How can we take it a level up? And this is probably coming up in every discussion we have about AI now. It's moved quickly.
What is agentic AI in plain English, and how is it different from generative AI?
So the way that I think about agentic AI is framing it in terms of ways that people already understand their business. Think about a deployment of an agent as a virtual worker that has skills and capabilities in a domain of expertise. The big change is an agent isn't the same as a computer program. It's the same as a human. So it's going to have flaws. It's going to need support and it's going to need conversation. But you actually speak to an agent like you do a human, not in some complicated technical jargon. And you say, hey, I'd like to set up a new user account on our partner system in English, like you would to maybe an intern. The agent has all the connections, AI capabilities inside of it to go and execute that task and do it for you. So it's really this kind of mind shift from AI is this computer program or essentially a question and answering bot like Google to these are actual workers in my business. They actually need to be managed and all of that kind of stuff. So much closer to a human than to a computer is kind of that bridge of where an agent is.
And some of those results we see kind of on a day-to-day basis as we're looking at implementations. Now, if you have somebody coming in who's taking orders out in the field, so you have multiple orders, it's really easy for a human to look at order from company one and order from company two and assess, hey, which fields go where? We've been doing this for years. It was traditionally hard to program that, but now where AI sits, putting that into a non-deterministic workflow, letting AI look at the data, pull the text out of the data, decide where that data goes, suddenly starts adding efficiency and capability to these processes that weren't necessarily automatable before.
So I think another point there is I talked about an agent as a virtual worker. So you interact with it like a coworker. Well, that's great. That's how you interact with it. Potentially other agents interact with it to get work done. But under the hood, like what's an agent? An agent's front end is the English language, what we're all comfortable building businesses off of. Underneath it, it's a combination of hooks into a lot of different AI systems. To Tom's point, a lot of different data systems. And it's the conglomeration of all the things like a human would need to access to complete the task. When we build an agent, we're giving it access to brain power, which is the AI part, the decision-making capability, and also the data sources, what it needs to make decisions off of. The creation of that becomes a package that you can then speak to in English. Think about it like training an employee over 3 or 4 years at your business. You're giving them access to a lot of tools and people, and those people might be agents now, as well as data to be able to accomplish their tasks. So we're just building an agent the same way we're training and building an employee, giving it what it needs to be able to get to the outcomes that we want.
Why is this relevant right now for mid-market organizations?
As you're looking at the amount of skill that it took to approach some of these solutions, even just 5 years ago, you had to have a specific developer skill set, somebody who understood AI. You need to have somebody who understood how to automate processes. And the change that's become available now is agents are so capable, models from LLMs are so capable that they're enabling not only just large enterprises, but now mid enterprises, even small enterprises, to be able to come in and have some of the same efficiencies and some of the same gain that traditionally you needed to have a ton of investment.
So the transform that's going to happen in the next 5 to 10 years is going to be a transform of all businesses at all levels as agents become virtual coworkers inside of a business. So if you think about it at kind of the mid-market or smaller, the kind of same sea that's raising all boats is raising the mid-market as well. So why do you have to go and do something with this now? The simple reason that other people are. So unless you're a company that has a monopoly in a particular area and you have no competition, small startups are going to be coming that are building from agents first, trying to do things that your business can currently do well, and direct competitors of similar size are going to be doing it. So if they're able to deliver the same level of revenue more efficiently than you are, they'll ultimately win the race. So you have to think about it in terms of your space. I need to be in front of this because everybody is doing it. So I need to be at the kind of lead position into it. Everyone will change in the next 5 to 10 years. If you don't change, you eventually become irrelevant in the discussion.
Why do so many AI initiatives stall out before production?
So I think that this discussion branches back from the MIT report that came out, and 95% of AI investments fail. But if you look through the report, the reality is drawn out. It's not that AI investments fail. It's that it's incredibly difficult to measure them. Um, Traditionally, when we were looking at the same way we measure developers and product sales, it was hard. You'd have a lot of people using AI for efficiency in an organization. There's no tracking on that efficiency. You'd have individuals using agents while coding or building small agents for their tasks. Those really aren't realized. So as the idea of agents have become more and more available to organizations, the tooling around them, understanding what the ROI is, becomes an easier and easier test. You're built to now not only orchestrate and deploy AI solutions, the solutions today are built to be able to monitor them and understand the spend around them. And as that has turned, now it's become easier for companies to not only understand and expand their investment, but truly see what ROI is on each individual task they're doing, which makes it much easier to call AI a success rather than just looking at the end state of efficiency and kind of guessing how it affected your company. When you look at standard kind of black box agentic systems, you run into the problem where as you look from any angle, you really don't understand how AI usage is being bucketed either by department, by user, even by individual task. So where we've gotten to today is by taking the same observability that we've plugged into AI solutions across the board, by bubbling that up and making sure all of the agentic solutions come down and use that same pipe, you end up getting not only the same kind of security and guardrails that you do for your enterprise AI solution, you get the same observability. So whether you're looking at this from I need artifacts for a regulatory purpose later on down the road, or I need to understand how AI is being used within agents, within a specific department. These are all now realities where, as simple as 3 years ago, these didn't exist. This layer didn't exist, which made it really difficult to assess what was successful in AI and what wasn't from an organizational standpoint.
I think in terms of what the benefits are and why projects fail with AI, there's a real unlock here with agents. Because what are agents? They're virtual workers that have kind of domains of expertise. So a virtual customer support rep should be able to handle client interactions, should be able to answer client problems. Those are tasks that that agent is built to satisfy. In the prior era before agents, it was here's a chat interface. I hope everybody uses it well. I might have observability, but I can't really govern what that individual person is doing with it. With the agent, it's like, for instance, answer a support ticket for a client. The key here is all back on the ROI. So first we have to measure it. Well, first it actually has to be secure and private and governed. Once we have that kind of table stakes, then we need to be able to measure it. And the great thing about building agents into existing business processes, because if we're answering support tickets, we were already doing that via humans. So we have KPIs and metrics about how long does the average ticket take to answer? What was the quality score? What was the customer feedback? We know what the current state of human answering is. So when we go and deploy an agent to take those tasks, like answering a support ticket, we have an apples to apples measure comparison. You need a platform like Expedient's AI control workflow engine to be able to see those same measurements. But once you have those measurements, which is, hey, we answered this support ticket, it took us 2 seconds. On average, it takes us 2 hours to answer that ticket via human. What's the cost of my agent platform to run that versus what's the cost of having humans allocated to those tasks? Now the ROI is extremely clear because you're able to measure both of them and see, are we seeing a material difference? If we are, that's a great green light or signal bell to say, what else can we do in the organization?
There's also a ton of unlocks that come from taking this path, right? So if we talk about real customer examples, we have clients who are doing exactly what you said. We are one of them, but we have clients that use an agent to answer all of the, and it analyzes the tickets that come in, looks at the percentage that they can be handled in one ticket. If they're lower volume, it goes in and answers them. It leaves the more complicated tickets for agents still, right? So this is a good way to start with implementation. But there's an unlock that happened, and we've seen it on multiple clients. If we have a support rep, and that support rep is responsible for answering tickets, I'd like you to go in, take a look at all of their tickets, tell me how we're doing in every ticket by bucket, right? Give me what the MTTR is on every one of those buckets so that we have an approach to go into the QBR to talk about what we're going to do better next year or what we did good last year. Those things are happening today with customers as live unlocks that weren't even necessarily designed for the original agent. The original agent's job was to handle automatically answering tickets. And now suddenly you've saved 2 to 8 hours on every single QBR process on top of that. So you get this scaling Lego effect of building an agent where there are more and more places you can apply it. And it may have the skill set of a support person, but as it steps up, it becomes even more and more and more valuable.
That's actually a great point, Tom. You're not building an agent for one specific outcome. You're building a knowledge worker. So again, back to the human, you're building a support rep. You're not building a ticket answerer. The first iteration of it might be it can handle support tickets. But because it has the knowledge to handle support tickets, it also knows tons of things about the support system. So to Tom's point, management can ask it questions, but you have to like switch your brain to thinking about the agent as a coworker and not a robot that does one thing really well, because it's well beyond that. And that's the big shift between kind of programs and computers to agents. and being human for all intents and purposes.
What does successful agentic AI actually look like in practice?
I think this is a big differential for Expedient. So if we sign a client up for the workflow engine on our AI control platform, it's not just we're going to provision you this system. Good luck building your agents, which will lead you into pilot purgatory. We will hook you with a team of support personnel, both that support the overall account as humans, as well as the specific agentic outcomes. Because the key is you have a business process. You may not even understand fully your business process. It might not be fully documented. You may have 7 different business processes you think are great candidates for agentic AI. You need a shepherd, a Sherpa, a chaperone to take you through that journey, not just a piece of technology. So we provide you that team, but what does that team do at the beginning? Let's get our arms around what the art of the possible is and kind of stack rank the ideas. The idea that you think might be the best one actually may not have the biggest impact on your organization. So let's kind of sort that out and figure out what's the tip of the spear? What's the first thing that we want to start on that can show real ROI in a relatively short amount of time? Because you as a client need to prove to your organization that we need to expand this. If you're watching this webinar, you probably already believe a lot in AI and its power. I don't know if everyone else in your organization thinks similarly. How are you going to get them around to your side and where you see things going? You got to prove it. We'll help you prove that. And that outcomes team, in conjunction with you and the process owners in your business, can build a minimum viable product agent to start showing off some of those capabilities. So we'll help you down that road hand in hand. And having that human aspect is a real key piece to solving this and making sure we don't get stuck in a new technology, yet we can't figure out how to use it. Or the CFO says, well, that's great, we're spending money, where's my ROI? We can get you to the point of proving that.
You hit a really important part on pilot purgatory. A lot of the reason people get stuck there is the fact that you have an AI guy or an AI team, right? And what are you doing with that team? It's 2, 3 people, everybody in the organization. You have CEOs saying, do this. You have individual people saying, hey, in my support team, I want you to do this. As you unlock having, and again, self-serving to us, as you unlock a outcomes team that can help you, you move the responsibility down from the AI team closer to the person who is knowledgeable about the process, who's responsible for the process. So instead of in traditional kind of software development, right? You would sit in, you'd work with a contractor, your devs would talk to their devs. You wouldn't actually know the business process well, and you would just kind of be throwing darts at a dartboard and hoping you hit a bullseye. Now you move this down. You don't have to be a development expert. If you have a team that can help you implement at the end of the day an outcome, well, now we can talk to the people who are responsible for that outcome. And that unlocks pilot purgatory because people want to use the things that were built for them. It seems simple, but it's incredibly effective. As you're looking at really common workflows, right? So if somebody needs the ability to pull data in from a database to be able to look to see what opportunities are ready and then send out an email to salespeople, those things we've already built. Nothing is grab it off the shelf and plug it in, but in most cases, the framework's already built and it's a quick delivery. Really with us being highly reliant on tickets here as an organization. If you're in the support side of the house, we have a bunch of those things built that we can help deliver right out of the gate. And as these business processes become larger and larger, you don't actually have to take and tackle the whole thing at one time. Really, you can break down individual workflows and use these little kind of close to off-the-shelf workflows. Once you have them all working, then you can pipe them onto an individual agent. You can connect them to something more advanced. You can automate them through webhooks or integrating them directly into other processes. So you get a ton of functionality, but you can start very small, kind of small bites to get going.
I'd say let's start with the vision of where we're seeing this tying into clients over time. So our vision is to create a recipe book inside of different domains in the business. The sales domain, we've talked about the support domain, the finance domain, the operations domain, and the legal domain. So we have a set of templates that we're constantly adding to in each of those domains that can essentially be that recipe to quick start you. It doesn't mean that you press a play button and it knows your organization and it's tied into all your data sources. But think about it as the scaffolding or the structure that we plug into the way that your business does work. So essentially making it with a recipe book that you can get to the finish line 80% faster because you've started with the architecture as opposed to having to build it from scratch.
And on that recipe analogy, you can, from the moment you have the recipe, we immediately can change the ingredients to fit your case, right? So if we're going to stay on that analogy, whether this is changing the type of connector that we're connecting to, if it's a support ticket system, whether it's Kayako, whether it's Zendesk, whether it's custom built, at the end of the day, the process is the same, only the individual connector changes. So those general frameworks become incredibly extensible.
Does agentic AI replace jobs, or does it just change how teams work?
I approach this conversation from a different perspective than most people did. Um, I think that if you're looking at the most common replaceable jobs, we're going to move towards a place where agents are more efficient, and those are the places we want to plug people in, where we want to plug agents in instead of people. But the act of people managing the agents, bringing expertise to agents, validating that the agents are running right, and not necessarily operating the entire or developing the agentic workflow, but validating the results that come out of them become an incredibly important piece. I don't know anybody who wants to read through all of their emails or who wants to answer the 1,000 entry support tickets, right? The goal would be that those things that are able to be operationalized can be. And then you move the humans into places where they can be more effective in the business rather than have them, their only effect being a cog in the wheel to answer tickets or to review inbound analytics stats.
Without a doubt, AI, and especially agentic AI and virtual workers, are going to displace non-virtual workers. That's coming. I don't know exactly how long it's going to take or what magnitude, but it will be material. And so as you're sitting there listening, well, what does it mean for me? And what does it mean for my company? I think about it as what roles are going to be there in the future? Like, what's the bankable roles? Well, you could go and probably be a tree surgeon because AI is not coming for that very soon. But inside of the normal corporate world, inside of that envelope, what are the jobs going to be? The jobs are going to be more management jobs of I have a fleet of agents that are capable in this area. Agents themselves are not fire and forget computer programs. They break, they don't take vacation, but they screw up. You've got to talk to them. You've got to make them coordinate with each other. So I think about it as the skill set that's necessary goes from I'm a line worker, individual contributor doing these types of tasks to I'm managing those line workers, which some of them may be human, some of them may be agents, to accomplish those same types of outputs. And anybody who's been a manager knows it's very difficult to orchestrate that type of stuff at scale. You got to stay on top of it. You got to give everybody the right breadcrumbs and seeds that they need to succeed. You got to hook them up with the right resources so they can be effective. And so it becomes a very interesting, different job. So, like, to me, that job is to be in high demand. And then it's like, what's the skill sets that you need? And it feels like the skill sets are moving from, like, we'll just use programming as an example, from the technical discipline of these esoteric programming languages to the design architecture and team management capabilities. So more of the creative. I think Andre Karpathy said 2 years ago that the next great programming language is English. True. And by the way, it's here right now. It's not in the future. So if you think about it, I need to be able to clearly express what I want to build to a fleet of agents and some humans so that as a cohesive unit, they can deliver the outcome. That's a wild change for a lot of people, but I know that that job will be in high demand. And I just picked on programming, but it's not just programming. That's where it's starting because the people building AI are really good programmers. It's going to every single domain in the business, whether it's support, operations, finance, legal. It will be the same thing across all domains. So the safe bet is I'm going to be the best person at managing these outcomes, and I'm going to employ humans and agents in tandem to do that. Wrapping our minds around that and the skills that we need to add to ourselves or learn, or more importantly, how uncomfortable it's going to make us if we've been a programmer for 30 years and are used to doing an excellent job in this process. Well, your process is going to get turned on its head. It's going to be very different, and you just have to be willing to adapt, to be uncomfortable and change to it. But those are the types of roles that I see being in an organization. The other possibility is, let's say an organization shrinks because it doesn't have as many needs in these areas. It's probably never been a better time to build something new inside another organization, inside of your organization, because the only limitation now is not the super deep technical expertise that you have, which has been a limitation for everyone, lawyers, programmers. It's now, how can I specify this beautiful thing that I want to build and find the resources, agents or humans that can help me with that? It's, I think, one of the greatest times to build. So if you want to build and you can clearly communicate what you want and manage the inevitable stuff that comes back that isn't quite match what your vision is, that's going to be in demand. So more of like, I don't know if it's a creator economy, but like it's going to be the easiest that it's ever been to build things.
If a company is still in pilot mode, what should they do next?
If you know your destination, which is agentic AI, and you don't know how to get there, you need a guide. That's us. We can be your guide. We have the humans to help you as you come to terms with it, and we've got the technology to implement it. So we can help you down that path to figure out what the right steps to take are.
I would say engage with us and talk to our AI outcomes engineers and find out what solutions can be delivered in short order. It is much easier to get past the AI hump when you start having individual, small, quick wins that are driving real ROI to an organization. Those things reverberate through an entire organization. And it happened here internally at Expedient. Everybody at Expedient was aware of AI as a technology, but as individual workflows started being used throughout the organization, that ripple effect turned to bigger ripples, and new drops as people saw and used the small workflows and then started building bigger workflows. And now there's a ton of automation, which if we would have put this 2 or 3 years ago on OKRs, we would have stretched to reach it because it would have taken so much effort. I think to walk away and understand that there's magic that exists today on the outside of where your company's at in implementing AI. And I use the word magic on purpose because until even somebody like myself, Brad, our teams that have been doing this every day, we are astounded at the solutions that are able to come out of either agent development, out of the agents and ticket solving solutions. There's just an amount of magic. There's no better word that exists outside of that wall. So you should spend time. While I think most of the companies on this webinar they understand they need AI, right? But there's this limit of, we need the efficiency, we need the generative AI, but agents seem scary, right? Looking at getting past that wall there is a ton of, until you see it in action, we can't do it right by words, capabilities that you open in your organization and your individual teams by becoming kind of experts at messing with agents.
Agentic AI is the future of your workforce at every single organization for everybody that's on this call. The sooner that you wrap your hands around it and its implications is the sooner that you're going to be able to start getting buy-in and integration inside of your business. We can help you go down that path, but the true work is inside of your organization, because this is a systemic organizational change, and that doesn't happen via technology. That happens because humans are bought into the process in the future, and they're willing to make all of the bets to make it happen. So we can help you with the technology implementation side of it, but the real work is inside of your organization to help them understand what the future is and what's the pathway to get there.
Hey everyone.
Okay. Thanks everyone for attending the webinar. The first question about the technical or organizational signs a company is not ready for agentic AI. Think about it kind of in a crawl, walk, run scenario. People have to be comfortable with using AI kind of in their day-to-day before they're starting to think about how can they start to mechanize this at scale. If folks aren't comfortable with using chat, you can just look at usage status across your organization, then it's going to be maybe a bridge too far to have them start thinking about agentic. Doesn't mean it can't be a parallel path potentially, but that's one piece. Probably the other that I would say for mid to large size organizations is for agentic specifically, because it's a business process transformation, an organizational transformation, is what's your kind of executive level buy-in on it? So, and specifically at the CEO level, because this is a CEO level type mandate. And if the CEO isn't bought into what the implications are, then it's going to be really hard to progress far into agentic, because you're going to be reworking and remapping kind of core business processes. And, you need some significant executive buy-in for that. So if you don't have that, it's a good time to show your CEO or your senior executives kind of what the art of the possible is, and start that path of building them into kind of what that's going to be. Tom, do you have any thoughts on this guy?
I think you're dead on, right? The signs that you're not ready for agentic is that you're not really sure of the capability of AI. You're not really sure at the direction for AI. You're not really sure at the approach. I said it multiple times. I do think agents represent a level of magic that solve a tremendous amount of problems around the edges for deploying complicated solutions. It makes them much easier to deploy. A lot of effort has to go in, a lot of understanding, a lot of scoping. But to start that without having AI in the organization, without having done some preliminary work to identify what are some of the workflows that you'd like to automate, what's the potential to automate it, all of those things are good signs to help. Hold on, let's slow down. Let's get our foundation taken care of, and then let's talk about how to build on it.
Well, and I think, to kind of drill into this a little bit more, when I was talking about kind of CEO level buy-in, there's a couple of pieces. One is what's the art of the possible? What can we do with agents? But the other is what are the implications to my organization of implementing agents? And that's a CEO driven kind of vision and mission statement for what this is going to do. Because, one of the very important elephants in the room is, what does this mean to my workforce? If we're going to start automating customer service or marketing capabilities or technological capabilities with agents, I can't just say, hey, that's what we're going to do as an organization without giving my employees a plan for how am I, as an individual contributor or manager, going to fit into this new vision of what our organization will be. If you don't set the groundwork for that, you're probably not going to get buy-in from the folks in the organization, because it could be a threatening thing potentially. So figuring out what that message is for your organization and being very transparent about what that means for every person at your organization is kind of the other part that has to be solved. Otherwise, you'll find it would stall out. Okay. What's the most surprising real world use case you've seen for agentic? Maybe Tom, you can lead off.
Sure. Mine is going to be something probably not expected and a lot of people aren't talking about right now, but AI to validate AI's own responses sounds silly, right? It sounds silly that I would get a response from AI and then I would use AI to validate the response, to eliminate potential for hallucinations. But the ability to take an agent at almost any scope where an AI decision is being made, whether this is generative AI, whether this is agentic coding, so using Claude Code, using Codex, using Cursor or an IDE, or if this is building a workflow, a pattern has emerged that's almost comical in nature. That is, I want to take whatever the ancillary initial discussion pieces, the ancillary pieces and the initial discussion pieces, and then the response that came out of an agent or that came out of an AI prompt, and I'm going to give it to an agent that has full capability to review and assess the accuracy of that answer. And even if it's going to the exact same model, it affords a level of security before you forward emails on, before you merge code, before you email executives, before you communicate with customers. I just don't think we naturally think that way, that you get a response from the robot and then you send it to a robot to see if the response is safe. But it's a growing path that's incredibly interesting in to see how it builds trust in AIs and in AI results and limits hallucinations.
Yeah, I saw a pretty cool one that is a corporate strategy agent. So as you're trying to figure out where should we be building our business, or what opportunities should we be looking at, or additionally, what threats are kind of out there, I found it very interesting that there was an agent that we had a client create that was able to connect to a lot of extremely confidential documents and information about where a particular company was going to, and use it as a corporate strategist. So, hey, build a pro forma to do X, or we want to make these types of assumptions. Go out and do research about what this looks like in the market now. Who are our competitors? Things that are, I would say, if you look at certain agents people talk about, like customer support agents, you're automating very repetitive tasks. But what kind of amazed me about the corporate strategist agent is you're doing extremely high level thinking that could have huge implications on directions that you might pick, could drive boardroom type conversations, and that the kind of willingness or trust to outsource some of that critical thinking that had prior been the domain of very sophisticated executives in the company to an AI agent. And the AI agent has a bunch of tools. It can access a bunch of different information. It has ways to do research that you kind of give to it in terms of a lexicon or a guidepost. And now that becomes a coworker for any strategist or corp dev people inside of the company. I was pretty amazed at the quality of output and capability that's there at a very high level task. Because I think agents, a lot of people are like, well, this will automate a lot of low level tasks in my business. So I thought that was pretty cool.
So the next question is, how do you keep AI agents from creating bad outputs at scale without introducing too much human oversight. Wow, it's almost like I just answered this one, right? So it's not all built into the last answer I just gave, but this is one of the solutions that I'm seeing people take, is using AI as a safeguard to validate the logic that went into solving a problem, right? So you can think of this from a coding perspective. What was the logic that was taken to solve this problem? What was the initial user criteria? What does the application look like today? And does this all make sense? So this is the programmatic way to approach it, but the human way to approach this is by curtailing the tools that you provide to an agent, right? So if you're providing specific agent tools to access data, we'll highlight a traditional support use case that we talked about in earlier in the video, right? So as we talk about, we have support comes in, we have a QBR that needs to be ran. So we have an agent that goes out, understands how to talk to the ticket system. The complexity in building that seems complex, that it's, you got to understand where the tickets are, what makes the ticket close, what makes the ticket open, what's its state, where does it belong, which category is it in, which stage is it in, what's the time it was open, what's the time the stages changes. There's just a ton of information that we normally put on boards for operations around tickets in the OSC or network ops. The pulling back from that and introducing small tools that are incredibly succinct. I have the ability to connect in and just pull ticket information. I have the ability to get client information. I have the ability to create a log request. By taking this approach and letting the model do the heavy thinking as part of the agent to answer the user's request is an approach that almost by design helps limit bad outputs, because the best way to stop bad outputs is have good input.
Yeah, so I take a little different tack on this particular one. So, whether you're looking at a process that's a coding process, a customer support process, a business strategy process, your company probably you already have these processes in place and they're human bound right now. So you're like, oh, I can introduce an AI agent into this process. So how do I mitigate my risk of doing something bad? I think first thing that you look at is, what's the consequence of not being 100% accurate with this process? So if you're closing the books for a company every month, that needs to be 100% accurate. Do we trust that AI is 100% accurate about everything? No. So you'd be like, okay, maybe certain processes where I need absolute accuracy, maybe we'll put those off to the side or figure out. Now, for the ones where we don't need it to be 100% accurate, like 95 or 90% accurate would be fine. Coding would fall into one of these. Customer support vis-a-vis what a human would do probably falls into one of these. So you think about what this process that you're trying to achieve, but thinking about it in terms of a virtual worker. So the same way that I would manage a new employee coming into the business, telling them, where do documents live? Who do you need to connect with? Who are the resources that you need to have available to accomplish this? And then tightly managing that. A lot of human in the loop at the beginning, because what are you trying to do? You're trying to build trust that this agent is at the fidelity or greater than the fidelity of a human that would be running that process. Humans are fallible, agents are fallible, workers are fallible, virtual workers are fallible. And so just like management oversight, you start out with a lot of care and feeding for a new employee in the same way you would start out with a lot of care and feeding for a new agent. And over time, as you develop trust in a new worker or a new agent, you start pulling back, how much oversight do I need? And essentially you're delegating more and more authority over time. So while it might involve a lot of human work at the beginning, so you don't get very much efficiency by using the agent, in the course of the next couple of months, 6 months, you're kind of pulling back as you develop trust over the kind of components that the agent delivers. And so I think that's probably the right pattern for trying to mitigate the risk. Giving it the right resources, the right access to data, the right ability to communicate, also kind of mitigates potentially having erroneous stuff kind of come out of an agent. What capabilities do you think businesses will expect from AI agents 12 to 24 months from now that feel advanced today? And Tom, do you want to start with this one?
Yeah. So if I'm looking in my crystal ball, there's a direction that it feels to me everything is pointing towards as we become more and more familiar with agents, wrapping agents into a set of functions that are close to what an hourly loaded human would be feels like the natural progression, right? Well, today we're taking individual processes that people would do and we're offering automation and efficiency for those processes, accuracy for those processes. I think as you see things like the standard AI DLC become something that companies are implementing, you'll be able to get a set of tools that this is my code review agent. My code review agent isn't just one agent that knows how to get data out of a pull request and review it. It's a multifaceted set of agents and tools that understand to go look at what the initial user specs are, focusing on development. But I think you'll see this across the board where you'll start seeing an aggregate of multiple agents and multiple tools that can interact with each other that can more or less represent a specific job title.
Yeah, so I would actually answer this by looking 12 months ago and specifically focusing on the programming domain. Tom and I are both software developers, and seeing what happened between 12 months ago and right now as a model for other areas of the business. So 12 months ago, if you queried a group of senior developers and said, how much are you using AI? What are you using it for? The general answer would be AI can make things up. It puts garbage in the code. It's not quite there right now. I have to do a lot of heavy lifting. In fact, some senior developers would say, I don't use AI that much because I ended up having to do more work to fix AI's kind of bad thinking than it would have taken me just to do it myself. That's 12 months ago. Today, there's organizations, Anthropic is one of them, that entire process from the architecture, once that's built, so that's more of a verbal process of figuring out what we want to build, all the way through delivering the code and QAing it and deploying it, entirely AI agents at this point. Not every company is like that, but the company that everybody's going to help build code, which is Anthropic, has completely automated that entire process. And so obviously they had to deliver, build trust in their own system that it was capable of doing it. But I think the domain of where we thought humans were going to need to be in the loop and where the technology is today of where humans actually need to be in the loop has shrunk precipitously, from maybe 60% in the loop to 1% in the loop, mostly at specification and kind of checking in to making sure the outputs are there. I'm not saying every company can be doing those types of things today, but think about that as a stamp in other areas of the business. Just happens to be a lot of the folks building AI stuff are also programmers. So that's kind of where you're seeing the tip of the spear with how things are going to transform. Obviously, you have to have buy-in from your organization and you have to build trust into those, but it fits the same kind of mentality, fits in finance processes, it fits in support processes, it fits in engineering processes, accounting processes. It's across the entire span of the organization. And so I think that all of those other areas that aren't super technological programming will follow suit in the next 12 to 24 months. But there's this huge gap right now between what is the technology capable of delivering and what are you as an organization comfortable implementing? Because there's all kinds of thoughts around security and what if there's access to the data? What if this agent goes and deletes a spreadsheet that is a critical thing to our business, or some customer records, or leaks something? Like, those are all things that have to be contended with in terms of risk mitigation to kind of build it out. But the technology is there today. And so I think the faster moving organizations, the nimbler organizations will start adopting it quicker. And the risk, if you don't adopt it
quicker is that your competitor is, and they're going to have a pace of execution and a kind of a capital utilization profile that is much more beneficial to them than yours is. So it's kind of like, hey, gotta kind of keep up with where things are at and make sure that somebody else doesn't spin their flywheel up substantially faster. Okay, for companies feeling overwhelmed by the pace of AI evolution, what's the smartest way to stay competitive without chasing every trend? I think the key is understanding here what the art of the possible is. So if you haven't experimented with agent systems, maybe you're not ready to actually do that. Maybe it's not in your domain of something that you're capable of doing. Checking out videos. I mean, it could be like YouTube or just learning what other people are doing with it to get your mind wrapped around what the implications of agentic AI are going to be for yourself, for your personal career, and for your business or any kind of business you're going to be out of the future. You don't have to go deep into the technical rabbit holes of why this or why that. It's just understanding what the art of the possible is. There's some great podcasts out there that talk about this type of stuff all the time, not at a technical jargon level, but at a what does this mean for your business and how do you kind of construct your business to make the most of this? Agentic AI is not a trend. How it gets implemented, there could be trendy ways of doing this or using this system to do it. Those may come and go. But the concept of I can turn things that were previously in the domain of human workers into virtual workers and have them be kind of self-sufficient systems to execute these processes and tasks, that's here to stay, and it's getting implemented rapidly at scale. So if you feel like you're behind, that's okay. The key is just saying that I want to understand where this stuff is going and investing some time, whether it's in work or out of work, so that you feel like you have a grasp of where this general stuff is going. That will make you more informed to figure out, okay, what are the tactics to go about and do that?
And guys, that wraps up our questions that have come across. We appreciate your attendance. If you guys have any questions, feel free to reach out. Happy to start conversations about AI control, our agentic platform. Just have discussions of where you are as an organization. Reach out to your SA, reach out to your partner, reach out to your AE. We're happy to engage in these discussions and kind of help you find this path to what's the proper approach for AI, what's the proper approach for agentic, what's the right pacing. Thanks,
Okay, thanks everybody.